Unit 4, Road to Revolution, Chapter 11, The Alamo and Goliad, Lesson 2, Victory or Death. We will learn that while the defenders of the Alamo eventually fell to superior Mexican forces, the Texans' bravery in the battle inspired others to continue the fight for independence. Terms to know: fortify, to strengthen defenses; apparent, readily known, obvious; bombard, to attack continuously with cannon fire; compound, a walled-in area containing one or more buildings. When did it happen? February 23rd, in 1836, the Battle of the Alamo. February 23rd, Mexican cannons start bombarding the Alamo. General Santa Anna demands the Texans surrender. February 24th, Colonel William Travis writes a message to the people of Texas and all Americans in the world. March 3rd, Travis writes his last appeal for help. March 5th, Travis meets with his men to discuss their certain defeat. March 6th, Mexican troops launch a full-scale attack on the Alamo. Defending the Alamo. How well were the Texans prepared to defend the Alamo? The Texan commanders at the Alamo realized that they had too few soldiers to hold off a large Mexican attack. Both Bowie and Travis believed, however, that holding the Alamo was very important to the fate of Texas. They made clear to Santa Anna from the start that they were determined to hold the old mission. On February 23rd, Santa Anna sent a message to the defenders of the Alamo. It demanded the Texans surrender. In response, Travis ordered a single cannonball shot. The Texans had some advantages, but also some serious weaknesses. Their advantages were the Alamo's surrounding wall was thick and tall. 21 cannons helped fortify or strengthen the defenses. They were determined to win. Their weaknesses: the surrounding wall had a gap in one place and was crumbling elsewhere. They had to defend a huge area within the walls, about 460 feet long and 160 feet wide. Their force consisted of only about 200 men. Despite their weaknesses, Travis and his men were determined to hold the Alamo. To many of them, the mission was a symbol. It showed what the Texas Revolution had already achieved. The Texans also saw their defense of the Alamo as a key to the continued success of the Revolution. They were blocking Santa Anna's access to other Texas settlements. Travis wrote several messages seeking help. His letter of February 24th, 1836 is one of the finest statements of courage in American history. In it, he explained that he was determined never to give up. He ended the letter with the words, "Victory or death." Colonel James Fannin wanted to help. He set out for San Antonio from Goliad with more than 300 men. His relief effort ran into problems, and he had to return to Goliad. Some help did arrive. Lieutenant George C. Kimball brought 32 men from Gonzales. With them was Albert Martin, who had delivered Travis's victory or death letter in Gonzales. He came back to the Alamo despite facing certain death. Santa Anna intended to show the defenders no mercy. He ordered a red flag flown. This was a signal that he did not plan to take any prisoners. All the Texan defenders would be killed if the Mexicans took the Alamo. On March 3rd, Travis wrote his last appeal for help. James Bonham delivered the letter to the Convention of 1836 at Washington on the Brazos. Travis ended it by restating his intention to fight. Like Martin, Bonham returned to the embattled mission after delivering the message. He, too, knew that he would likely die. As more Mexican troops arrived, it became apparent or clear to all inside the Alamo that they had no chance for victory. Since February 23rd, Mexican cannons had been bombarding or firing upon the Alamo. The Texans had cannons and long-range Kentucky rifles. They shot back at the Mexican troops, but they were seriously outnumbered. On the evening of March 5th, Travis met with his men. He directly addressed the matter of their certain defeat. The 200 men, mostly volunteers, were free to leave the Alamo at any time, yet nearly all decided to stay and fight. The fall of the Alamo. Guiding question: what was the importance of the battle at the Alamo? By March 5th, 1836, the siege had lasted 12 days. Santa Anna was growing impatient. He knew that Texans were meeting at Washington on the Brazos. He suspected that they could be discussing independence. He also knew that further delay meant more time for Texas to gather fighters. It was time to take the Alamo and move on. He ordered a full-scale attack for the next day. At about 5 o'clock in the morning of March 6th, the battle began. The sheer size of the Mexican force, as many as 1,800 men, was too much for the brave but few defenders. They turned back the first two waves of Mexican troops. The third wave stormed over the walls. The Texans were forced to pull back into the compound or walled-in area of the fort. Men from both sides used rifles, knives, and clubs in the desperate fighting. About 90 minutes after the attack began, it was over. Santa Anna reported 600 Texan defenders killed at the Battle of the Alamo. Historians think the true figure is about 190. Among the dead were Travis, Bowie, and Crockett. Only one Alamo defender survived by claiming to have been a prisoner of the Texans. Santa Anna paid a heavy price for the capture of the Alamo. About 600 Mexicans were killed or wounded. Texan survivors of the battle were nearly all women and children. Santa Anna released them. Among these was Susanna Dickinson, wife of an officer. Dickinson, her daughter, and other survivors traveled to Gonzales. There they delivered the solemn news of the battle. Some historians think the defense of the Alamo ensured that Texas would win its independence. Battle of the Alamo slowed and weakened Santa Anna's army. It encouraged citizens of the U.S. to help Texans in their struggle for freedom and gave Texan leaders time to declare independence and form a government. More importantly, perhaps the courage, determination, and heroism of those in the Alamo inspired other Texans to carry on the struggle. The battle cry of General Sam Houston's army became, "Remember the Alamo."